They won't fear the size of your fists, darling. They'll tremble at the size of your thoughts. There will come a day when you walk into a room and no one can deny your presence, not because you're loud, not because you're flashy, but because your silence speaks louder than their noise. A strong mind carries a power they can't measure, control, or predict, and that terrifies people. But here's what most never tell you. Strength of the mind isn't given, it's built through loneliness, through losses, through silence, and through seasons where all you had was your own breath. That's why you must stay with me until the end. Because if you learn how to build that kind of mind, not only will you stop explaining yourself, you'll stop shrinking where you were meant to rise. They often teach us to chase things, approval, applause, positions, followers, status, and somewhere along the way we begin to confuse validation with value. We learn to measure ourselves by mirrors we didn't build, by the volume of noise outside us instead of the strength of the truth inside us. But a mind that is truly powerful does not need the world to nod in agreement. It does not wait to be chosen, praised, or liked. It simply knows, and that knowing is where real power lives. You see, when you know who you are, not in theory, not on your good days, but down in the marrow of your bones, the world loses its grip on you. You become unshakable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can redefine you. People will try, life will try, circumstances will try, but you will keep rising, not out of defiance, but out of design. The kind of knowing I'm speaking of isn't loud or boastful. It doesn't parade itself. It doesn't tweet about every victory. It doesn't need to. This kind of knowing is quiet, grounded, anchored in something far deeper than reputation or image. It's what walks into a room before you do and lingers long after you've left. It's the stillness in your eyes when someone tries to provoke you, and you choose peace over performance. It's the smile you wear when they underestimate you, and you let your results do the speaking. Power built on needing is fragile. It collapses the moment the crowd goes silent. It fades when the likes stop, when the audience turns, when the applause dies down. But power built on knowing, that's eternal. It doesn't depend on being seen because it sees itself. That's the kind of strength you must build, the kind they can't touch, even if they try to tear you apart. When you know yourself, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop offering explanations to people who've already decided not to understand you. You stop diluting your ideas to fit into conversations too small for your vision. You don't shrink so others can stretch. You stand fully, boldly, completely, and not in arrogance, but in alignment. And that's the very reason it scares people, because a person who needs nothing from you is the hardest to manipulate. When you stop being hungry for validation, you stop being easy to control. You no longer say yes to be liked, you say yes because it aligns with your purpose. You no longer accept less because you fear being alone. You choose quality over company, even if it means walking by yourself. And when you walk alone with confidence, you become a mirror for everything others haven't dealt with inside themselves. People will try to project their fears onto you. They will tell you that you're too much, too distant, too deep, too strong. But that's just another way of saying, you make me uncomfortable with how free you are. And that's okay. You were never made to be comfortable for everyone. Power doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from standing still when others expect you to shake, from not flinching when you're tested, from not backing down when they want you to disappear. You may lose people on the path to knowing yourself, but you'll gain peace, purpose, and power that no one can give or take. When you truly know yourself, you become rooted, and a rooted tree doesn't fear the wind. It doesn't waste energy on storms. It simply stands tall, grounded, and full of life. The winds may bend it, the seasons may strip it, but still it rises again. Knowing yourself doesn't mean you'll never doubt or feel afraid. It means that even in fear, you will still act. Even in doubt, you will still move. Because your steps are no longer driven by fear of being unloved, unseen, or unworthy. You've already claimed your seat at the table, and if one isn't offered, you know how to build your own. Let them talk, let them question, let them misunderstand. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing, your growth, your transformation. What you owe is to the younger version of you who once wondered if they'd ever be enough, to show them that not only were they enough, they were always meant for more. So stop waiting for permission to become who you already are. Stop waiting for applause before you believe in your gift. Stop asking small minds to validate your vision. Stand in your knowing. Let it fill you. Let it carry you. Let it terrify the ones who only know power as control. Because the truth is this: once you know who you are, no one can ever make you forget again. There is a power that doesn't scream. It doesn't swing wildly. It doesn't argue to win. It just watches and waits. That power is emotional control. It is not a lack of emotion. It is not numbness. It is presence with discipline. A strong mind knows that reactions are expensive, and silence, when used wisely, is a weapon sharper than any blade. Emotional control is not just maturity, it's survival. It's spiritual warfare without noise, and the one who masters it becomes unpredictable and therefore unstoppable. People will test you. They will press your buttons, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes intentionally. They want to see if you still bleed where you've claimed to have healed. They want to pull you into their chaos because your calm exposes their lack of it. And if you're not grounded, you'll find yourself wasting precious energy defending yourself to people who never came to understand, only to provoke. When someone knows they can rattle you, they know they can lead you. They know that their mood can become your mood, their chaos can become your atmosphere. But when you master emotional discipline, when you decide that your peace is not negotiable, something changes. You become an observer, not a puppet. You listen with awareness, not just ears. You speak with intention, not out of impulse. That level of control does not go unnoticed. It's felt. It shifts the dynamic in every room. The person who doesn't react is not weak. They are calculating. They are protecting something sacred. They are choosing their battles with the precision of a surgeon, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Because not every fight deserves your energy. Not every insult needs a response. Not every wound needs public proof of pain. In fact, when you stop reacting to everything that bothers you, you begin to conserve your energy for what builds you. The truth is, most emotional reactions are a reflection of unresolved pain. People poke at you and you flare up. Not because of them, but because of what their words touched inside you. Emotional control doesn't mean ignoring your wounds. It means healing them so deeply that they no longer own you. It means being able to hear a trigger and not pull it yourself. And that's why it scares people, because a person who has emotional control cannot be lured by cheap tactics. You cannot be manipulated with guilt. You cannot be distracted by drama. You cannot be broken by opinions. Your presence becomes unsettling to those who thrive in reactionary environments because you no longer play their games. You sit still while the room spins. You breathe while they panic. You smile while they throw shade. And somehow, without a word, you win. There's a difference between being soft and being fragile. Fragility breaks, softness bends. Emotional control is softness with strength, the ability to remain flexible without being broken, the ability to feel without being consumed, the ability to stay centered even when the world tries to pull you apart. People will always try to transfer their emotional weight onto you. They'll hand you their insecurities, their bitterness, their pain, disguised as conversation, criticism, sarcasm, or silence. Your job is not to carry it. Your job is to recognize what is yours and what is theirs, to return what doesn't belong to you without apology. The more you learn to master your emotions, the less you start explaining yourself. The less you tolerate situations that drain you, the less you engage in things that disturb your inner clarity. You begin to value silence not as avoidance, but as wisdom. You learn that a calm mind sees clearer, speaks truer, and moves wiser. And from that place, you begin to lead your life, not be led by it. Control is not pretending nothing affects you. It's knowing what's worth your response. It's choosing not to let every inconvenience become a catastrophe. It's knowing how to hold your center even when everything around you is off balance. Emotional control is like holding fire without letting it burn you. You still feel the heat, but you learn not to let it set your world ablaze. In a world that is constantly trying to bait you through offense, through noise, through chaos, your calm becomes your power. Your silence becomes your message. Your peace becomes your protest. And your ability to stay grounded becomes the one thing they can't take from you. That's the kind of power that shifts atmospheres, not with force, but with presence, not by dominating others, but by mastering yourself. Because the fiercest kind of strength doesn't roar, it whispers, "You will not move me." And in that stillness, in that quiet command of your emotions, you will find the kind of authority that can't be taught, only earned. There's a certain richness in a person who listens more than they talk, who reads more than they announce, who observes before they assume. These are the people who carry a depth the world doesn't always understand, but always feels. A mind that feeds in silence becomes a voice that echoes long after it speaks. Reading, in its simplest form, is not just about knowledge. It's about expanding the walls of your world beyond your own experience. It's about gathering pieces of wisdom from souls who live before you, far from you, or differently than you. And when you read more than you speak, something shifts. You stop talking just to be heard. You begin speaking only when there is something real to say. The ones who read are rarely loud. They don't speak to fill the room. They speak to fill the moment with meaning. And when they speak, people pause, because it's clear that their words were born out of thought, not ego. They've sat with other minds, through books, through history, through stories that weren't theirs, and it has humbled them, it has stretched them, it has carved out a place inside them that doesn't need to prove itself, only to offer something valuable. You can tell when someone has spent time with ideas that challenge them. You can hear it in the patience of their tone. You can feel it in the way they listen. Their ego doesn't fight to be right. It's too busy learning. Their confidence doesn't need to dominate. It's rooted in understanding. They're not threatened by opposing views because they've already made peace with not knowing everything. When you read, your perspective shifts. You stop thinking of life in binaries, right or wrong, good or bad, success or failure. You start seeing the layers, the nuance, the complexity of being human. You realize that people aren't just what they do, they're what they've survived. They're who they're trying to become. And this awareness changes the way you engage. It gives you grace for others and also sharpens your discernment. You become both softer and stronger, a rare and powerful combination. Books carry more than information. They carry spirit. They carry the rhythm of minds that dared to think deeper, love harder, resist louder. When you read, you're not just collecting data. You're meeting the rawness of thought, the vulnerability of confession, the power of language. You're reminded that you're not alone, that your questions have been asked before, that your pain has been survived before, that your dreams are not as impossible as they seem. And that's what makes your voice dangerous once you begin to speak, because it's not just echoing surface level noise, it's coming from a place of reflection, from a place of depth. And that kind of voice carries weight. It can silence a room without raising its volume. It can challenge minds without shaming them. It can lead without needing applause. In a culture obsessed with attention, it's revolutionary to grow in silence, to consume words, to wrestle with them, to let them change you before you ever share them. Social media teaches us to perform. Reading teaches us to think. Speaking may get you noticed, but reading will get you prepared. You'll stop chasing relevance and start chasing wisdom. You'll realize that a moment of applause means nothing if you have nothing to say when it fades. Reading more than you speak doesn't mean you stay quiet forever. It means you take the time to shape your inner world before presenting it to the outer one. It means you understand the power of language and choose to use it with care, with precision, with purpose. Every word you speak becomes an offering, not a weapon. Every idea you share becomes a mirror, not a mask. There's also a certain kind of humility that comes from reading deeply. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you still don't know. You stop needing to have the last word. You stop needing to be the loudest voice in the room. You begin to choose silence, not because you're afraid, but because you've learned that wisdom doesn't always speak first. It waits, it listens, it watches, and then, when it's time, it speaks with clarity that cuts through the noise like lightning through the dark. So take your time, build your mind in the quiet, sit with ideas that make you uncomfortable, read stories that aren't like your own, study lives that endured more than you ever knew was possible. And as you do, your voice will find its own shape, not molded by trends, but by truth. When you finally open your mouth to speak, let it be full of something that matters, not because it's loud, but because it's real. There is a kind of growth that can only happen in silence, a kind of clarity that only reveals itself when the world stops pulling at you. Solitude is not loneliness. It's not the absence of people. It's the presence of yourself undisturbed. It's where you meet your own thoughts before the world edits them. It's where you feel the full weight of your emotions without distraction, without judgment, without performance. In a world that's always asking you to be on, solitude is the most sacred kind of rebellion. Most people fear solitude because they haven't yet made peace with who they are. The silence reminds them of what they've avoided, the questions they haven't answered, the pain they haven't healed, the dreams they've been too afraid to admit, so they run into noise, into people, into anything that will distract them from the stillness. But if you're brave enough to stay, if you're willing to sit in that space, even when it feels uncomfortable, solitude becomes your teacher, your healer, your guide. Everything you are seeking in the outside world has a blueprint in your solitude. Your peace, your power, your creativity, your intuition. These things don't rise from chaos. They bloom in stillness. When you step away from the constant demand to perform or please, you begin to notice what you actually want, what actually matters, what actually fuels you. That's why solitude is sacred. It's where the noise fades and the truth gets louder. People will misunderstand your need for space. They'll call it antisocial. They'll call it distant. They'll take it personally. But that says more about their dependence on constant stimulation than it does about your path. Protect your solitude anyway, because in those quiet hours, you are rewriting your narrative. You are redefining your standards. You are remembering who you were before the world got too loud. In solitude, you begin to see things clearly. You start to notice the difference between what's real and what's rehearsed. You realize how much of your energy has been spent managing other people's perceptions of you. You start to let go of the version of yourself you created just to be accepted. And when that happens, something shifts. You stop begging for crumbs of validation. You stop chasing noise that empties you. You stop apologizing for your need to disconnect. Solitude gives you back to yourself. In that space, you are not a title. You are not your work. You are not someone's opinion of you. You are not the roles you've played or the expectations you've carried. You are just you. And that realization can be both terrifying and freeing. Terrifying because you realize how much of your identity was built around other people. Freeing because you finally understand that you are enough on your own. This is where real power begins. Not in crowds, not on stages, but in those silent moments when you choose yourself, not out of ego, but out of need. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you stop settling for connections that drain you. You stop filling your calendar just to avoid being alone. You become intentional with your time, your space, your energy. People may come and go, seasons may shift, relationships may evolve, but your solitude remains. It's your anchor, your center, your refuge. It teaches you to walk through storms with your head high, not because you're unshaken, but because you've been here before. You've weathered darkness without a spotlight. You've healed without an audience. You've grown without applause. Solitude doesn't mean isolation from the world. It means connection to your core. It means building a life where your peace is not dependent on external circumstances, where your joy doesn't vanish when the room empties, where your identity isn't shaken by absence or silence. That kind of strength is rare, and it is born again and again in solitude. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it. Just go there, into the quiet, into the still. Let the world wonder where you've gone. Let them question why you're not as available, not as visible. You're tending to your roots. You're watering what matters. You're becoming someone the world can't shake because you've already faced yourself and survived. And when you return from solitude, you will not return the same. You will return more whole, more focused, more powerful, not because you were hiding, but because you were remembering, building, listening, becoming. In the sacred space of solitude, you didn't lose yourself. You finally found her. There comes a moment in every journey when the skin you've been living in no longer fits, when the roles you've played, the places you've stayed, and the people you've entertained begin to feel too small for who you're becoming. It's not arrogance. It's not disrespect. It's evolution. Growth will ask you to shed the old. And when it does, you don't owe anyone an explanation for who you're no longer pretending to be. You will find that not everyone is ready for your transformation. Some only knew how to love the version of you that played small, agreed often, stayed quiet, or accepted less. The moment you begin to raise your standards, speak your truth, protect your energy, and choose yourself, resistance will rise. People will say you've changed, and they'll be right. But that change is not a betrayal. It's a return to the self you buried in order to belong. Outgrowing isn't something you schedule or seek. It just happens. Subtle at first. You begin to lose interest in gossip. You crave conversations that nourish. You stop participating in cycles that once felt like home, but now feel like traps. You find yourself saying no more often, not out of bitterness, but from clarity. You're no longer interested in proving your worth to those who refuse to see it. And still, people will ask for explanations. They'll want to know why you don't reach out like you used to, why you're distant, why you've pulled your energy back. But here's the truth. Explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you is energy wasted. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your evolution. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Some were only ever meant to walk with you for a season, not a lifetime. You are not responsible for managing other people's discomfort with your growth. Your healing may remind them of what they've chosen not to face. Your boundaries may highlight where they still have none. Your confidence may expose their insecurity. But that's not your burden to carry. You do not have to dim your light for those still hiding in their shadows. Let them feel what they need to feel. That's their journey. Stay on yours. Growth requires silence. It requires distance. Sometimes it requires complete disconnection, not out of hate, but out of honor for yourself and your process. You can love people and still walk away from them. You can be grateful for who someone was to you and still recognize they no longer fit where you're headed. There is no guilt in that. There is only truth, and the truth will always lead you home to yourself. The temptation to explain is real, especially when you care, especially when you fear being misunderstood. But not all things require closure. Not all doors need to be slammed shut. Some simply need to be outgrown gently, fully, without fanfare. You don't need to defend your healing. You don't need to apologize for your awakening. The people who are meant for you will adjust. The ones who are not will resist and reveal themselves in the process. This is where your strength will be tested. Can you keep walking even when it's lonely? Can you choose growth even when it costs you familiarity? Can you hold your peace while others question your silence? That is the mark of someone who is becoming, who is no longer governed by people-pleasing or the need for approval, someone who has learned that their destiny is too sacred to be explained away for comfort. You are not who you were a year ago or even a month ago, and that's something to celebrate, not defend. Every lesson, every tear, every loss, every triumph has shaped you into someone new. And this new version of you doesn't need permission to exist. She just needs space, space to expand, space to walk freely, space to stand in her truth without shrinking for anyone. You will find peace when you no longer feel the urge to make others comfortable with your transformation. Let them think what they want. Let them talk. Let them watch. Your life is not a debate. Your journey is not a courtroom. You don't owe testimonies to people who haven't walked your path or carried your burdens. Some will call you selfish. Others will call you cold. Let them. What they can't see is the fire it took to become who you are now. The nights you cried, the ways you broke, the ways you rebuilt, the quiet hours where you chose growth over comfort. That is yours. It doesn't need to be broadcasted or justified, just lived. So keep rising, keep evolving, keep choosing yourself without apology. You've outgrown what once held you, and that's not something to explain. It's something to honor. Keep walking. You don't have to look back. Softness is not the absence of strength. It is the presence of restraint. It is the decision to be kind when cruelty is easier, to be still when anger begs to be loud, to remain rooted in grace when chaos demands a reaction. The world has long mistaken softness for weakness, but there is nothing weak about choosing tenderness in a world that profits from hardness. There is power in not being hardened by what tried to break you. There is brilliance in being calm when everything around you is trying to steal your peace. The strongest people do not always roar. Some of them speak softly. Some of them carry a presence that silences the room without raising their voice. That kind of strength doesn't need to dominate. It commands with ease. It does not react out of ego, but responds with awareness. It moves through life with a quiet power that comes from self-respect, not control. When you learn to use softness as a strategy, you learn to stop performing strength and start embodying it. Softness is not submission. It is not the absence of boundaries. In fact, softness rooted in clarity is one of the most intimidating forces you can meet because it does not yell, yet it is heard. It does not push, yet it moves. It does not fight, yet it wins. The person who has learned to respond with gentleness has already done the hard work within. They no longer need to prove themselves. Their softness is not fear, it's discipline, it's awareness, it's power under control. Most people react. They lash out, they speak before thinking, they choose rage because it makes them feel temporarily powerful. But power without wisdom is just noise. It burns fast and leaves ashes. When you use softness intentionally, you slow down, you speak with purpose, you observe before you act, you see through people instead of overreacting to them. You recognize that not every situation is worth your fire, and not every confrontation deserves your storm. Softness allows you to see beyond the surface. It gives you access to rooms where arrogance is rejected. It builds bridges where pride would build walls. It invites trust, not fear. And trust will always take you further than force ever could. The person who knows how to be soft while staying grounded is someone you cannot manipulate. They are not guided by insecurity. They are anchored in self-awareness. They're not easily provoked, and that makes them unpredictable in the best way. In a culture that encourages loudness, assertiveness, and self-promotion, choosing softness becomes a radical act. It says, I am not what happened to me. I am not your projections. I am not who you want me to be in your chaos. I am here. I am whole. I will speak when needed, and I will walk away when necessary. That's strategy. That's wisdom. That's a kind of elegance born not from weakness, but from maturity. You don't have to match energy that doesn't align with you. Just because someone comes at you with heat doesn't mean you have to meet them with fire. Let them burn out. Let them exhaust themselves trying to pull you into a war that does nothing but drain you. Your softness is not a weapon, but it can be a shield. It protects you from becoming what hurt you. It protects you from repeating cycles that once made you lose your peace. There is grace in walking away quietly, in saying less, in observing more. Not everything deserves a response. Not every insult requires defense. The more you evolve, the more you realize that silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. Softness isn't about being passive. It's about being selective. When you know who you are, you no longer need to defend it. You simply live it. People may mistake your softness for naivety. Let them. What they don't know is the depth of strength it took to remain tender after the pain. What they can't see is the discipline it took to speak calmly when your heart was storming. What they overlook is how your softness is not about them at all. It's about the promise you made to yourself to stay rooted in love no matter how bitter the world can be. You don't have to be hard to be respected. You don't have to be harsh to be heard. Speak clearly. Set your boundaries with grace. Say no with warmth but firmness. Move with intention. Let them feel the steadiness in your tone, the clarity in your presence. The world does not need more loudness. It needs more people who know how to stand in their softness like it's a crown, not a burden. Because true strength isn't in how hard you can hit. It's in how well you can hold your peace. It's in how gently you can carry your power. It's in how beautifully you can stand in softness and never once bend in spirit. Build a mind so strong it doesn't scream. It echoes. So vast it makes insecurity nervous. So whole it scares the very ones who tried to fracture you. When they say you've changed, smile and whisper, no, beloved. I've remembered who I was before the world forgot. And that is power.